At Schwerin, Tony Fokker and his talented engineering team had just finished putting the final touches on their triplane design, the first two examples of which were delivered to the front towards the end of August. Ever since the passing of Fokker's Eindecker monoplane from favor a year and a half earlier, the Dutch designer had flown a series of biplanes which he'd hoped to sell to the German Air Force. Again, the failure of Fokker to produce the next generation of frontline fighters stemmed more from the unavailability of reliable engines than the aircraft he was testing. Still considered an outsider in Germany, his efforts to secure a share of the coveted Mercedes engines had proved futile. One engine that was available in abundance, though, was the Oberorso Rotary, a copy of the French Larone. Inspired by the success of the enemy's Sopwith triplane, Fokker and his team went about designing a triple-decker of their own. The resulting dry-decker, designated the DR-1, neatly circumvented the engine problem by creating a fighter that was exceptionally maneuverable and sported a remarkable rate of climb. With its short fuselage and stubby wings, the DR-1 could virtually turn around in its own length and climb a mile into the air in barely 2 minutes. Like all German fighters of the day, the plane was equipped with 2 forward-firing Spandau machine guns. The first 2 triplanes were delivered to Jagdgeschwader 1 for evaluation. Von Richthofen had returned to his command on August 16th, 40 days after he'd been shot down and wounded. One of the new Fokkers, painted bright red of course, had gone to him. The second Dreidecker was handed over to Werner Voss, now the acting commander of Jasta 10 and the victor of 38 air battles. Success while flying the new machine was quick in coming. On the first day of September, the Baron scored with the triplane, shooting down an RE-8 two-seater, which he'd been able to close on from behind without a single shot being fired at him. The RE-8's crew had probably assumed that it had been a Sopwith triplane behind them and had watched it approach without concern. On September 3rd, both von Richthofen and Voss each scored while flying their new triplanes. Von Richthofen's victory, his 61st, was over a Sopwith pup belonging to No. 46 Squadron. The Sopwith's pilot, Lieutenant A.F. Bird, managed to crash land his machine and was taken prisoner. Anthony Fokker, eagerly following the progress of his new machines at the front, drove with von Richthofen out to the crash site to pose for publicity photos with the wreck. Voss's victory that day, his 39th, was over a Sopwith Camel belonging to No. 45 Squadron. The new 3-winged Fokker suited von Richthofen well enough, but in Werner Voss's hands he had found the perfect weapon. Voss, a more natural flyer than von Richthofen, was quicker to realize the potential the aircraft's amazing maneuverability offered, and over the next 8 days he shot down 8 enemy machines. Voss was von Richthofen's closest competitor in scoring, and when the Red Baron left the front later that month for further recuperation stemming from his July wounding, Voss saw von Richthofen's absence as an opportunity to perhaps take the lead. On the morning of September 23rd, Voss scored what would be both his 48th and his last victory when he led the pilots of Jasta 10 against a flight of de Havilland 4 bombers. Later that evening, while patrolling alone, he ran into a flight of 5 SE-5As belonging to No. 56 Squadron. Despite the lopsided odds, the German ace threw himself into battle against the enemy. What Voss couldn't have known was that he pitted himself against 5 of the Royal Flying Corps' more seasoned pilots, including James McCudden and Arthur Rhys-Davids. Rhys-Davids had been in the Flying Corps since early 1916, and after taking a period to learn the craft of airfighting, had begun steadily scoring over the Germans. By the time 56 Squadron ran into Werner Voss, Rhys-Davids' victory tally stood at 18 kills. Voss may have been outnumbered, but he definitely controlled the pace of the air battle. The handling of his Fokker astonished his opponents as he twisted and spun through and around the British formation. A red-nosed Albatross fighter, flown by Karl Menkhoff of Jasta 2, briefly joined in the fight, but was hit by Rhys-Davids and forced to drop out of the action with its engine dead. For 10 minutes, Voss kept the pilots of the 5 SE-5As sweating under the veracity of his attack and managed to put bullets into each one of the British machines. It was a remarkable exhibition of flying on the Germans' part, but in the end it was Rhys-Davids who eventually scored the hit that sent Foss and his Fokker triplane dropping out of the fight, where it crashed to pieces inside the British side of the lines. English soldiers gave Foss a burial where his machine had fallen, and the remains of his Fokker were removed to a British airfield to give the Allies their first look at the new German fighter. Two of the SE-5As Foss had fought were so damaged that they had to be written off from active duty. James McCudden later wrote that the German ace had been the bravest airman it had ever been his privilege to see fight. It was a fitting tribute to Werner Foss, who was only 20 years old at the time of his death.